So something I just like to do is just unbundle and like recreate, drop, reseed, and then run my server just when I'm first starting up my application, just to make sure clean slate, everything is going to be working, no surprises. Cool. So we now have our server running. I was doing some testing with Missy Elliott once again, so you'll see her lovely face. So we're on Rails. Excellent, excellent news. Now let's make sure, for example, we can see our JSON data. That's up and running as expected. And then if I'm gonna switch tabs over here. So whenever I'm building my JavaScript project and I have a back end and a front end, I just have like 2 tabs open in my terminal. So in here, I'm going to run open index.html, and we should see our data or what our work from our last session. So if you were at our last session, this should all look familiar. We are first, that's not what I meant to do. It's not the shortcut I wanted to press. So we're first, I don't know what, oh, I know exactly what that's about. But let's just review the fetch request we did last time. In our last session, on load, I am getting my, let's make this a little bigger so y'all can see, my syllabus data.
Hey, Ayana, real quick, could you paste the link to these repos in
yes, yes, such a good call out. Okay, so y'all real quick, I'm going to post in the chat both the backend, in case you wanted to clone that down or fork it and play with it. Where's the chat? There we are. Yes, super duper fly. Missy, we miss you. Okay, so I posted or pasted the link for the back end and the front end. And then I'm also, in this session, we're going to reference this repo that I've shared quite a few times, and I'll tell you why, but I'm also going to share that in the chat, just so we have all of those links here and accessible. Cool. So we have all those shared out. And as we recall, right, on load, the very first thing I'm doing is fetching to get all my syllabuses, syllabi. Right now it's just one, and this is what the shape of that data looks like. The exact same thing as I see, right, in my JSON over here. So we're looking good, we're in good shape. If I wanted to create a new syllabus, just like I did with Missy Elliott last time, and then I already have her image address here, paste that, create that syllabus. We see Missy shows up here, but then I also get my post requests from at this endpoint, right? And I can also preview that JSON data here as well. That's what we did last time. And I also want to pull up our actual notes here. So we talked about events, talked about doing both a get and a post request. And then Sushi asked a question, a really, really good question last time about, okay, what if there's an error and we want to do something on our front end? Maybe we want to, for example, and most often, show that error to the user. We can implement something called a .catch, and we could implement it doing something like this. And if we have some time, we can test it later on in one of our fetch requests. But we can call .catch off of a promise, just like we can call .then, just like we can call .finally, for example, these different functions that we can call off of promises. And same way we treat our JSON data or our response, we can kind of capture that error using an arrow function. You can either log that error just for us, or actually kind of update the DOM with the, like, update some inner text with this error, maybe like a red div that appears at the top of this, the window or something like that, or an alert. We can trigger an alert as well. So this is kind of a harken back to a question that was asked in part 3. Something we also wanted to talk about, or something we also talked about, was DOM manipulation. So thinking about that mantra, when some event happens, I want to make what kind of fetch and manipulate the DOM in what way. Currently in our code, when some kind of event happens, when the DOM content is loaded, I want to make what kind of fetch? I'm going to fetch and load my syllabi, which is happening on line 4. I'm going to make that note real quick. Fetch and load syllabi, right? That's what I'm doing. I'm going to make what kind of fetch? I want to make a GET request, which is happening on line 12, this function, and manipulate the DOM in what way? I'm manipulating the DOM here. Have this syllabus markup, this HTML code, and then I'm kind of updating the inner HTML of my syllabus container. I'm going to do a toggle soft wrap here. But I'm also doing the same thing in my post, right? Which is a little redundant. In a way that I could kind of dry this up a little bit is by implementing a render function straight into my code. This is going to dry it up. And then whenever I'm in, right, like the kind of like the second dot then of my post fetch or my get fetch, I would just be able to call render, right, and get that data. So let's go ahead and refactor this real quick. So I'm going to check at the chat. Good question. Is there a reason to catch errors in the fetch versus the controller? Okay, so there's a couple of things we could do. We could also do something like if, we could have some if statement in here as well. So displaying an error in the controller is helpful because it lets you know what failed in your backend, right? Whether it was a validation error or the object wasn't created correctly or the thing wasn't updated correctly, whatever it may be, or it couldn't find the ID, something went wrong. Handling that error in the backend, for example, we were doing something like this, right? Really what this is giving us is the opportunity to say, okay, if this was saved correctly, render some information, else render the error. If this else happens, we want to be able to show this to the user, right? We don't have any view files in our backend anymore, right? So if something happens, we need to be able to display whatever happened. That is what this catch is going to allow us to do. It's going to allow us to actually catch that error that's being returned in our controller. Here, I'm just console logging it, but eventually we can like create an alert or do something on the DOM that shows the user what the error actually is. Does that help? Anyone have any questions about that? Back in Rails, back in Sinatra, any error that came from our controller, we could just slap it on our view page using a flash or something like that, flash notice or our flash hash. Here, we actually have to like show that error using JavaScript. So that's what we're doing there. It's a really good question. Cool. So as mentioned, right, we could, in order to dry up our code, we have all this HTML here, then we have all this HTML here, right? If we wanted to dry this up, we could create some sort of like render function. right, that is going to actually do all of this HTML for us. So we could essentially write all of this code and all of this code could happen in this function. So we could literally take all of this. Let me make sure I know where this, where all this ends. I'm also going to move y'all over there. Cool. Oh,
Ayana,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just wanted to go back to that last question because you're saying it helps like you show the error to the user, but
Yeah.
in the controller you had could you oh wait, you're in the front end, aren't you?
This is the controller.
Yeah, you're in the back end, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know even what I'm looking at. So you have the render JSON errors right there. So like isn't oh I forgot we're not rendering view, we're just rendering the JSON. So it
Exactly.
takes it so like those errors get rendered as JSON and then the catch like takes those errors and like formats them kind of.
Yeah. Let's actually, I'm trying to think of a way I can produce an error because I think it'd be helpful to actually see this in action. So let's.
Or did you say you were going to get to that later if you had time? Because
Yeah.
I want to take up time if you have other things you need to get to.
But I also feel like let's at this point, like y'all, it sounds like y'all are curious. So I do want to, while it's relevant, speak to it. So, but let's finish this render and then we'll implement that catch.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. So on line 18, I got rid of previously, this is what we had. But now what I'm doing is I'm getting rid of all of that render code and I'm putting it in this function, in this reusable function that is going to take in the whole entire syllabus object. And then remember on line 18, I'm in a loop. I'm in a for each here. So now what I can do is call render here, pass in that syllabus. And now this syllabus is going to do, this render function is going to do all of this work for me. So let's see, let's make sure this works. I'm gonna, I can, yeah, okay, I just moved y'all up at the top there. So if I exit my console, right, I've updated my code, I'm refreshing the page. This is still rendering as expected. Looking good, looking good. If we jump back to our code, we can do the same exact thing for our post fetch, right? We're doing all of this stuff here. You make sure this, it's the same thing. Okay, and then let's get rid of all this. And then in here, we're going to call render. And it's going to be, we're going to give it the syllabus data variable. If y'all remember last time, we need to always be console logging the JSON response that we get back, or the JSON data that we get back from our fetch requests, because as you remember, the way fast JSON API serializes our data, it can get a little funky, it can get a little nested. So it's always good to see what the shape of that data is before you try to do anything with it. When we console logged it, we realized, okay, we need to do something. We need to like take this syllabus object that we're getting back and actually get the data object, because that's the syllabus data that we're interested in. So we've refactored that. We've gotten rid of all of those lines of code, reusing this function here. And then if we jump back to our application, let's create a new, someone give me like a person to research, something to research. What are we curious about?
Donald Glover.
Love
Yes. It. Whose voice was that? That was a very like matter of fact.
Our mystery guest.
All right, this is a good picture of him. Oh, look at him. Okay.
Not Childish Gambino, Donald Glover.
No, he's now Donald Glover. The polymath. Let's study the polymath. Okay, cool.
The I can do anything guy.
He can.
Did you see that the SNL skit?
The SNL skit, his music, his acting, his movies, all of it. Cool. So that refactor was successful. We've refactored, condensed our code, and we're able to reuse that render function in multiple places. We've significantly dried up our code here. No more HTML in here. No more HTML in here. It's all being rendered here. But let's actually see what happens if something goes wrong. And I'm trying to think, maybe in here, maybe let's try to get something that says, I don't know what syllabus is or something. I'm trying to think of what will throw an error.
Well, I was gonna say you could, if you have Postman on your computer, you could send it params and misspell one of them. That's what I was doing the other day.
Yeah.
And it was giving an error. But that wouldn't show up on.
Yeah, there. I'm thinking, do I have any, I don't have any validations. I'm just going to maybe leave out the title. I don't know if that'll, or just, I'll try what you say. I'll just misspell it. Cool. All right, let's give this a whirl. Let me share this with y'all. All right, so we're going to try to create, let's try to create a second Donald Glover. Do I still have, yeah, we sure do. All right, and then let's also make sure our console's open. Not really properly catch of undefined. Huh? Let's see, what are they talking about? Okay, I called Silverby. Huh. Okay, let's get rid of this index.html error that I'm getting. And then let's figure out what is going on with this dot catch error. All right. Let's just try to do this and see what could be awry. Yeah, it didn't. It just gave us a null title. What I may need to do is just, because if we look at our terminal here, it still went through without a, all right, so.
It might be more like validations.
Yeah, I need to put in a validation. So what I'm gonna do real quick is just put in a validation and see if we can actually get that error. Because I don't have any validations in, it's going to not care if the title is null. So in my models and for syllabus, I'm going to do validates, I think title, presence, true. I'm going to double check that syntax because I'm not entirely sure. Presence. Yep, that looks right. Title, presence, polling from the right place. Okay, cool. So that is looking correct, looking like it should work. Let's go ahead and try this again. Remember, in our syllabus controller, our title key is spelled incorrectly. So it should render our JSON. Let's give this another shot. So if we go back here, refresh the page. Do I still have, yeah, I sure do. Okay, there we go. It didn't catch it though, which is interesting. But if we look at, oh no, it did. This is exactly what we wanted. But I don't know why. I don't know why it's saying can't read catch up undefined. We need to investigate that a little bit more. But we are console logging that error. So if we look at, where are we? Index.js, line 20, right? We're doing a catch and we're console logging that error, which is what we see in the console here. Oh, actually, hold on. We're in Git syllabus. Let's actually do this down here. So what we were previously logging was just the syllabus object. Let's try this again. Cool. All right, where is this console log coming from? 64. What is this issue on 64? This is our error. So, okay, there's something, I'm not implementing catch right. Or
you know what? I think you need to, wait, what's that curly bracket at the 165?
This is to open up the arrow function here.
Wait, which arrow function?
On line 58.
Yeah, so you're supposed to put catch at, you're supposed to change it on the end of the fetch.
Because down here, it's no longer.
No, on the very end of the whole fetch.
Here? That's where it was. Right? Oh, wait, I think I may see where we're going wrong here. Okay, so I have, where is the end of that fetch? Is my bar, I think my zoom bar was blocking. Okay, so wait, this is there. So no, this is where the fetch ends.
Then, yeah, so no, you did have it at the end.
Yeah, I'm going to try it right here.
That curly bracket for 66, that goes like up somewhere else.
This is the function.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I'll try this one last place and then I'll figure this out and I'll just slap y'all in the what's it called? The Slack channel. But yeah, all these DGs here.
Well, it's not, yeah, there's not that error anymore. Or that
issue, yeah, catch of undefined issue. Yeah, something's happening. No, okay, yeah, I don't, but it looks like we also are able to, so if I were to actually, this is the syllabus object that I'm getting back. And if I were to go to my network tab, actually look at this error, I get an error back and it tells me argument error, unprocessable status code. But there's a way in which we should be able to actually get back our, no, I want to look in the stack trace. There is a way we should actually get back that specific error because I'm rendering errorful messages to the DOM, right? So that's ultimately what I want to get back. But this is a syllabus object, right? So if I look at the console, it's coming from line 60. I actually console log syllabus on line 60. So it's just giving me, it's kind of giving me an error back based on the object. And in here, I could do dot error, and I would actually be able to see that error here. So if I were to just like try this one last time, I would get that error, and then I'm just gonna do some gobbledygook, it doesn't matter. And it will actually show me, okay, it's an internal server error.
Can we see the Rails server output? And like for the, okay, yeah, so that in that brownish, the unpermitted parameter title.
Yep. So that's the error that we want to get back and actually catch. But it's not doing it as I expected it to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with this a little bit more after the study group is over, and send that to y'all in the Slack channel. But let's go ahead and fix that issue and talk about how we would refactor our code using OOJS, right? So fix the title, that should be fine. And then if I go to in here, validating for the title is fine. Yeah, something I need to like investigate this a little bit more. Uh-oh, my code freezing. Okay, there we go. All right, so we done a few things here. We've made our code more dry, but let's actually talk about our order of operations. Go ahead.
You want to change back line 60 too. Get rid of that dot error.
Yes, thank you. Cool. Yeah, let's look at our order of operations, y'all. So if we're kind of keeping in track with all of our progress here, we're on part 4. And before we get started, we're actually going to create a separate branch for our OOJS refactor. This is super, super important. Whenever I'm doing large refactors to my code, I'm going to make sure that I'm creating a separate branch, because I may get lost in it. I may start breaking things that were previously working, right? As it stands, I can successfully create something, and I can successfully like see all that data. So I'm not gonna mess with that. I'm gonna create a separate branch for everything that I'm doing here. And as we talked about, I would do that, make sure y'all can still see. Whenever I switch another tab in my terminal, it stops sharing. In order to do that, I'm first going to make sure that all of this stuff is pushed up to master. We refactored render. And index, rename. Hopefully that doesn't cause an issue. Cool. All right, so we now have pushed up working code to master. What I want to do now is create a new branch to implement all of this implementation. So for that, if we recall from our last session, I want to do git checkout or co-b. Checkout is going to check out, basically move us to this new branch. -b is going to actually create that new branch for us. I'm going to name it OOJS. That's what I'll name this one. Nice. So now we can see I am now on my new branch here. Git status, nothing's changed. Nothing to commit, working tree clean. Definitely what we want to see. All right, so we've done that piece. We've done step 1 here. What's going to be our next step in this process? right here.
Creating the class.
Yeah, we're gonna create that class. And in order to do that, I've made a few changes here. I've given us a source folder because we're gonna have more than one JS file now, so it makes sense to have it in its own folder. And then here is where I'm going to create a new file. Let's call this syllabus.rb.js. After creating this file, right, this is where my syllabus class is going to be created. But before I even start typing out my class, before I put anything in this file, what do I need to confirm?
That is linked to HTML.
That's exactly right. I don't know if that was Renika, but
Yeah.
that's okay, cool. That's exactly right, Renika. We need to first like make sure, okay, like, am I in my syllabus JS? Like, is this connected? Is this linked properly? Let's check. Not yet. What do I need to do in my code? Renika mentioned something about a link. What was she talking about?
You have to change your HTML index file on that script tag.
That's exactly right. So I need to create another script tag.
Oh,
First,
so you just add another. I forget as far as the order. So you want the first one being the first to load, like go down in order, right?
Well, so typically we want, if my syllabus class is being called in my index file, I need to load my syllabus class first. But it depends on whether it's in the head or the body. And people have different arguments for putting them in different places because of that. But the rule of thumb typically is like, okay, if my syllabus class is being called on in the index.js file, I want my syllabus class to load before index.js, because we may get an error that says, would undefined or undeclared something syllabus, right? So we're gonna make sure this is loaded before our index.js.
Okay.
Cool, that's an excellent question. So if we refresh the page here, nice. We now see that console log. We have successfully linked up that file. I now have the green light to actually create that class here. So what I'm gonna do now is go ahead and create it. So I'm creating my class. What's next here? All right, I created my class and I linked to my new JS file.
We need to create a constructor
That's
along with the properties that we will be making instances of.
Yes, that's exactly right, Carrie. So if I go ahead and just check these off real quick as we're moving right along, I've created my class, right? I've linked my JS file in my index.html. Now I need to create a constructor that's going to, like Carrie said, give us all of our attributes so we can use essentially copies of or kind of prototypes of my syllabus objects. But I'm also going to want to create an empty array that's going to push all of the instances of this, right, our keyword this, into an empty array. Then I have C part 4 notes, for example. So if we go to our notes here, where are we? There we are. Couple things to talk about, right? Before we even create that constructor, let's talk about why we even want a syllabus class. We talk about this a little bit in our intro to OOJS study group that I hold, but let's think about the current state of our application, right? If I were just rendering some text on a page, right, this would be fine. The current code that I have would be fine. But let's think about if I want to create some sort of patch request where I want to like know what button I'm clicking on. Let's say I want to create some edit functionality, for example. I have an edit button on my DOM. Right, I have that edit button. Let's say I wanted to actually click this and do something like render an edit form. I would need to know what syllabus I'm clicking on, what object I'm clicking on. Without data IDs and without kind of some sort of OOJS class that is encapsulating all this data, I would have to kind of like I would have to find that object and then update it. Whereas in OOJS, I can have an array of JavaScript instances and use that instead to find this class or find this instance and update it, this specific instance. And I go kind of in depth in this file, right? So let's think about the next step, right? Where a user clicks on one of the edit buttons. Without storing the IDs in the HTML elements, we could A, determine which syllabus got clicked on, and then B, show more information about the syllabus or like the content, the description of that syllabus. If I did not have those data IDs, and when we say our data IDs or our data attributes, if we did not put these attributes on our divs, this would be a very, very annoying, cumbersome process. Let's think about how I would find a syllabus if I wasn't using data IDs on my DOM. I don't think we got to talk about data IDs that much in our last session. Let's think about how in the world I would, for example, if I were clicking on that edit button, how I would know which syllabus I clicked. Without implementing or utilizing data attributes here on line 26 and 30.
You'd have to like create a new, oh my God. I'm blanking, a new thing.
In my back end or my front end?
You'd have to create a new const in your front end. Like every time you clicked to like automatically save that div into it.
Or even if I did that though, I would have to get that object back from my database. And what I would most likely have to do is something like this. Is looking at the inner text of my H3, sending that data to my backend, making a GET request to my backend, or would it be a post?
Yeah, it would be a GET. It would be a GET. You'd set like a GET. You'd send a GET, and
I'd send it in the params.
Yeah.
So what would happen is I would have to make a GET request to my backend. I remembered how this would actually work by seeing params title. So I would send a request to my backend, and in those params, in that route, localhost 3000 API v1, it'd be like title, and I'd have it take the params of the title, and I'd find by title, right? And I have to do this every time I wanted to find a very specific syllabus and capture a specific syllabus, right?
And that's
this would be very annoying.
That's no duplicates either.
You said what?
That's assuming there's no duplicate.
Exactly. There's assuming that we have some like uniqueness title attribute in our, or validation in our syllabus model. And we don't want to do that. We want people to be able to, like, multiple people have Missy Elliott syllabi. So, right, we just had access to this data. We just had access to all of our syllabi. To have to then like effectively throw all that information away and find the syllabus one by one would be very, very annoying. There's two ways that we can get rid of that issue, is where we can refactor and use object orientation, right? Where we can take advantage of the encapsulation provided by the objects to store all of the data about our syllabi in one place, in our syllabus class. And now, and what we did previously was we've implemented these data IDs on our divs and on our buttons. And this is going to be how we can get rid of that issue of actually having to get requests to our backend just to retrieve some data. The very first time we retrieve and get access to that data, we can put these IDs on our DOM elements. And again, in here, I make a note about data attributes, and y'all can read the documentation there. I think I also have this documentation pulled up here, and I'll drop this link in the chat. But again, this is in the notes. Cool. All right, so now that we talked about why we want to use something like a class in the first place, why we want to push it in an array, right? We do an initial get to get all of the syllabi anyway. So why not just store them in an array that we can have here in our syllabus class for future use, in case we want to, for example, right, find a specific syllabi, which I hope we get to in this session, creating a static method eventually. But for right now, let's just go ahead and actually build out our constructor here. So in our syllabus class, we mentioned, we're going to want, just like in here, a constructor. Looks like a plain old function. A constructor is going to take in some arguments. And like Carrie said, we're essentially going to like map our attributes onto these new syllabus instances that we're going to be able to create using this constructor. So on this side, like what needs to actually happen in our constructor though? What does it need to look like? How are we going to, kind of like Carrie said, take those values from our database and map those onto like syllabus instances? That's the syntax here.
Use this.
Yeah. Use this.
But we have to take in a parameter from the form.
That's well, that's exactly what we need to take, some sort of parameter in here. But right now, let's just say, let's just call it data. All right, because we're gonna want to pass in some data, right? We can do, first what we care about is the ID, right? So we can do this.id equals what?
Data.id.
That's exactly right. So let's first try this, and let's go ahead and put a debugger here.
Also, Chris has a good question in chat. He said, in terms of snake case versus camel case, when does that become a problem in regards to persisting to your backend?
So yeah, that's a good question, Chris. It becomes a problem if, let's see if I can look at the part 3 notes here. Let's see. So it becomes a problem if, where are we? So for example, these are the attributes: title, description, image underscore URL, category ID, like category underscore ID. This has to match. The keys that we are sending back have to be exactly the same keys that are in our schema, right? So if I were to look at my schema here, in order to create a new syllabus, title, description, image underscore URL, category underscore ID. I could not send with a post request, for example, right? Communicating with the server, post request, patch request. I could not send back image, camel case URL, like capital U, back to the database. I can give it whatever variable I want, but that key, when I'm in my body, has to be exactly what it is like in the database. So in here, we're using something called destructuring. So all you see is title, description, image URL, category ID. But we could think about, if I wanted to create that body, like let's say this is the body. It would need to be title equals, or title is, I can name this like syllabus title, right? I can camel case here all I want, but like I would have to, my computer is lagging. I would have to snake case on whatever the key is. And I can do syllabus URL here, right? Because these are my JavaScript variables. These will be my JavaScript variables. Whereas on this side, this would be the actual keys that my database knows to, okay, this JavaScript variable belongs in the image URL with the image URL column name. So it's most important when communicating with the server, either posting, patching some specific data. Imagine this body object was in like a post request or a patch request. Is that helpful? Do you have questions about that? If so, I'm happy to go in depth. Cool. All right. Where were we? Constructor. So we now have kind of like a constructor semi built out, but I put a debugger in there because I don't want to assume our data, right? I don't want to assume the shape of our data. Let's actually test this out and try to create a new instance of our syllabus class before we get too far in building this constructor out. How would I actually begin to test this out here? What do I need to do? Where can I test this out or begin to start implementing my syllabus class in my index.js? What's the first thing I can use my syllabus class to refactor?
You can, when you when you do the function get syllabi,
Yep.
you're like essentially creating a new syllabus. So like that render, well, wait, do you have your render syllabus function in that other one yet? No.
Not yet. Not yet. Now we're just really trying to get this constructor up and running.
So
but you're right, I want to do something here. What do I want to do on line 19?
you can put like data, syllabi data for each syllabus. Like, I guess just make a new object, like,
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I would make a new syllabus object, new instance of my syllabus class. And in order to do that, I would do something like let new syllabus equal new syllabus, right? And I can pass in that syllabus object, right? So this, y'all, is how I create a new instance of my syllabus class so that I can now hit this debugger and actually see what that data looks like over there, right?
Just a question. Could you go back to the index.js?
Mm-hmm.
So on line 16,
Mm-hmm.
when you have syllabi, okay, so when you have, just because the wording that you used is throwing me off just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So you have syllabi.data because of the serializer.
Yep.
And then for each syllabus, but really that's still just like this JSON data. And then before, like without line 19, you're passing that data to the render function, and that's what that JSON data was rendering on there. So really now with line 19, you're passing this syllabus data to our syllabus class and constructing an object with it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
If you terribly mind renaming 16 and 19 to syllabus data instead of just syllabus?
Well, it's a single syllabus. So, okay, it can be syllabus data.
Just like, because it's just really kind of throwing me off.
Okay. Yeah. So it's just, but I named it syllabus because it's a single syllabus, right? So let's actually now, we have a debugger on line 18. We have a debugger on line 4. Let's see what's going on here. Let's actually take this debugger out. Cool. Yeah, let's do one debugger at a time. All right, so I'm in my browser here. Let's go back to our syllabus, kind of our page here, and let's refresh the page. We should hit our debugger. Just as expected on line 18, in our iteration, we are hitting our debugger. Let's check and see what syllabus data is. So if we were to go into the console and do syllabus data, right? That's the syllabus. That's our single syllabus object. If I were to go back in here, let's take a look at what we're doing on line 19, creating a new syllabus with this syllabus data. If we go into the console and I check to see, like I try to do new, and give it syllabus data. This is looking good so far, right? I now officially have my syllabus class, right? And this shows that it's a class because I have capital S syllabus here. Whereas with just syllabus data, this is just something from my database. This ID is looking good. Everything's looking good so far. So let's go ahead and finish building out our constructor here. So let's do, right, what else do we have on our syllabus? We have a title. If I can type. We have a description. We also have image URL. And right, we also have a category. So we finished building out our constructor. Let's now see how it's looking when we use this debugger, right? This worked, line 4 worked. So let's just go ahead and kind of create the rest of this constructor here. Let's test this. So if we go back here, refresh the page, we're hitting our debugger again. When we check to see what syllabus data is, this is the data from our database, as expected. But if we go and try to create a new instance of our syllabus class with our syllabus data from the back end, we get undefined on all of our attributes. Why is this?
Because we're using fast JSON.
Yep. Yep. That's exactly why. So
we should have known because right above it, it has the attributes and that's nested.
Exactly. The attributes are nested. So we have to do something a little bit different here. And this is why I think it's always crucial to put a debugger or console log in whenever we're getting some data back from our fetch, right? Because it's going to be a little different because of how fast JSON serializer nests our data. Does everyone see that? Our syllabus data is coming back. ID is at the top level of the object, but we have this attributes key where everything else is nested. So that when we go to try to create a new instance of our syllabus class, using that constructor, how we got the ID, doesn't work. So let's try to think about, right, how, or let's take a look at an example of how we would get around, around this issue. We know line 4 is working. What is this? Part 3 review. So this is the correct file. What we can do is we can essentially pass our get two arguments. We can pass our constructor, we can pass our syllabus class 2 arguments. One, just the syllabus or just the syllabus data. 2, the attributes of that syllabus. So that when we actually go into our constructor, we have an ID, this.id can just be ID. But then the attributes can be called off of this syllabus attributes variable. So let's actually see this in practice, and then we'll pause for questions here. So if we go back into our code, let's actually keep that debugger in. So, and I'm gonna name this just syllabus because that's how it is in the notes. I don't wanna be consistent. Don't wanna confuse anyone when they're looking up pushed up code and looking at the notes and seeing that it's different.
Yeah, cool. I got it now.
Yay, cool. All right, so yeah, this is our single syllabus from our backend. Let's give it 2 arguments. We're gonna give it the actual syllabus object, but then we're going to give it the attributes as well. If we recall, right, syllabus is one top level object, but attributes is another, it's kind of like nested within our syllabus object. So if we go back to our syllabus class, this will just be our syllabus, or that whole entire object. And then this will be syllabus attributes. This piece will now be syllabus .id, the top level. But then for the rest of these, where it says data, we're gonna update that to be syllabus.attributes.title. syllabus attributes dot description, syllabus attributes dot image URL, and the same thing for category. We still have our debugger in, so let's see how this is different when we actually go to create a new instance of our syllabus class. Gonna refresh the page, right? I am on line 18. Syllabus, again, if we recall, it's just a syllabus from our backend. Let's actually go ahead and try to create a new instance of our syllabus class using that. Let's see, we're getting an error. Title of undefined. Did I missed something here. Uh-oh, why is my computer freezing? Okay.
Is it syllabus dot
I think I may have spelled it.
data?
Syllabus dot attributes is our syllabus attributes, and then syllabus attributes. This dot.
Connie said dot attributes.
Dot attributes. Where we did that here.
Maybe we should look at the rendered JSON.
Let's go in. Well, let's look at our debugger, right? So if we just see what our syllabus comes back as, dot attributes should give us the attributes of our syllabus, which it does. I'm just gonna copy this real quick and make sure, because it could just be that I'm spelling something wrong here. All right, so that looks right. Those are my syllabus attributes. And then if I go into here, syllabus attributes title. This looks correct, but let's put a debugger in here. So this is a super important piece that I like to do whenever building out a constructor, because if your constructor is wrong, it doesn't matter the classes, the functions that you put in your class. Like, this constructor needs to be correct. So I'm gonna make sure this is saved. I'm gonna take my debugger out. I'm gonna comment it on line 18, because I really just wanna see what's happening over in my constructor. We saw what's happening over here. Title is undefined somehow, and I want to see why. So I put that debugger actually in the constructor itself. So let's refresh. We're now on line 5, hitting that debugger. Syllabus attributes. That looks correct. So let's see what's going on in our. This is our whole syllabus. That looks good. Syllabus attributes. That looks good. Title. That looks good. Oh, okay.
Does it have something to do with the strong params?
It has something to do with the fact that one of my titles on my DOM is undefined. So remember when I was playing around with Donald Glover? So all this is fine. I'm gonna keep playing through it.
It's your validation that's throwing the error? One
of these is null. Right? This is the Donald Glover one. So that's why I was getting that error. Debuggers are friend. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, this is working. To go ahead and get rid of those kind of like that data, I'm going to reset the database. But
no,
I do.
Your validation's working.
Huh?
You know your validation's working, right?
Yeah. Well, that was because now the validations are. This was before the validations was working, so this is a good reason to have validation. So there's never anything on your DOM that's null that's coming from your database. Because your JavaScript does not know, what you got going on. So I'm gonna break DB reset, and then rerun the server here, and then we should get rid of that error. But while I'm doing this, does anyone have any questions about the constructor so far before I put that constructor into my before I put that what's it called, the render functionality into that class?
I have a question, but it's, I think, kind of might be a deep dive. I don't know. So it's okay if you want to get to it later.
Yeah, well, let's save it for later since we got about 15 minutes left here.
Yeah, okay.
Let's see what's in the chat. Can we make a new one before proceeding? Can we make a new one before proceeding? What do you mean by that, Connie? A new what? A new syllabus. Oh, yeah, for sure. So, yeah, so that's a good point. We haven't yet done anything to our post fetch yet, but I think that's definitely a good point. Like, we've done some stuff in our controller, so let's just make sure this is still working as expected before we get too far ahead here. All right, so let's get our Donald Glover image and DG. Cool, and we got him back. Awesome. So we now have a constructor working. We know it's working, but we haven't actually done we haven't done all of step 3 here. Even though we have like 2 3s, but we haven't done the second 3. We need to like also make sure we're pushing all instances of this into an empty array, because eventually maybe we want to iterate over that array and find one syllabus, or just have an array of syllabus or syllabi that we can use in our syllabus class. And again, there is an example of this in our notes. Because a syllabus is just a plain old object, right? We can give it a .all key and assign that to an empty array. So let's do that at the end of our class here. Again, syllabus is just an object. Most things, all things in JavaScript are objects, right? We can give it this .all key, give it this empty array, and then say, right, syllabus .all, or what is the syntax here? .push, yeah, .all.push. .all.push, and I want to push each new instance of this into that array. Let's take a look at what that's actually doing for us. So we know all of this is working. Lines 1 through 8 is finally working. Let's see what our array is looking like and why we even want to do something like this, like push our instances into an array. We should have, yep, we have 2 now. We got rid of Missy. We'll add her later. Cool. So we've added our debugger here.
She wasn't in our seeds, that's why.
She wasn't in our seeds. What a mistake. So yeah, on line 10, we have our debugger. Code is stopped. Let's take a look at what syllabus.all is looking like. For right now, right, we just have one syllabus in here, and that's because we're in a debugger. But let's see if I can play through that. Can I play through that? What's this do? No, I don't think I can play through that debugger. But essentially what's happening is with each new instance, I am going to be pushing this. And currently this is my first syllabus. I'm gonna see if I can, I'm just gonna play through it so I can get to the second one. And now let's actually see what syllabus.all is. Yeah. So now I have both of them in there. So what's happening is because I'm creating new instances of my syllabus class in this for each on line 16, I'm doing that here. Every time I create a new instance, it goes through my constructor, right? That gets pushed into this array. This becomes super, super valuable, and we'll touch on it a little bit later because it is in the notes. But what I want to do before we go is actually finish this refactor where we're going to just do all of our rendering in our syllabus class. But before I do that, does anyone have any questions about how line 9 and line 14 are working, or our constructor in general? Because we've finally done step, let's call this 4, actually.
I have a quick question. Just like you have syllabus.all equals, and then syllabus.all.push. So you put that .all, is that like specifically to mimic the Rails convention?
No, it's not to mimic the Rails convention. I mean, .all is just a very good name for it. Just a very good name for an array that has all of our syllabus or our syllabi. But I don't think the JavaScript folks were like, let's copy Rails or let's like make it similar to Rails. I think it's just like a good variable or a good name that developers have decided to use when talking about an array of something.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good question.
It was a happy accident then.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
All the developers are in cahoots with each other. They're like doing similar stuff. Cool. So we have a constructor that's complete, but now it obviously doesn't matter that syllabus.all comes after. Comes after.
Because it's global, right? Since it's outside of the class.
Yeah. It's in the global scope. Again, this is just an object within global scope itself. This is all syntactic sugar.
Yeah, right. Scope. Forgot about that.
Yes.
Bonnie, that tripped me up so much at first with that .all. It's like, well, shouldn't it be inside? Because it's this, but no, it doesn't work inside.
Yeah. So yeah, it needs to be in global scope so it can know about the syllabus class itself, which is just at the end of the day an object. An ES6, I believe, ES6 object. It's just syntactic sugar from ES6. The way classes used to be declared in ES5 was very, very different. But welcome ES6, and we have this beautiful syntax that is happening here. But yeah, so that this knows, so at line 16 even knows about the syllabus class, it needs to be outside of it. Cool. So now let's go ahead and move on to part number 5, which is actually like refactoring the render functionality in our JS class, right? So what we can do here is, okay, all of this is currently in my index.js, but it really is about the syllabus, right? Like this really should just be the job of my syllabus class. I want to kind of encapsulate some functionality here and just only do my render in my syllabus class. So what I'm going to do to refactor this is I'm going to take this out of my index.js. And especially since that's the one function I'm reusing in multiple places, I'm going to put it in here. But the syntax is going to be a little different here. What things do I need to change with this function now that it's in my syllabus class?
This. You need to use this syntax.
Yes. Yes. So instead of right, taking I don't need to take in an argument anymore. I have this. I'm within the context. I have access to this keyword this. So I'm going to change all of this to this. Anything else that I need to change in here?
Doesn't it need to return?
Yes, that's exactly right, Carrie. So it's no longer like this const stuff, right? I'm going to actually just return this HTML, which means I'm no longer doing line 22 in here either. Because I just want to return some HTML.
Also, you don't need the on 15, 16, 17. You shouldn't need the attributes, the stat attributes.
That's exactly right. Shouldn't need this either. Why shouldn't I need that?
Because you're on 5, up above in the constructor, you're defining those attributes on the instance of that class.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So my constructor, I'm basically constructing this. I'm constructing instances, right, of like my this keyword here. So anything else I need to change here before I can, and then before we even do that, I'm just gonna log this so y'all can see what this looks like. Any other syntactic things I need to change? Because I'm in this class.
I'm wondering about like line 18, because it has category.name. And I don't know if it's going to know what that is.
Yeah, so let's actually put a debugger in here instead. That's a good call out.
And excuse me, Diana, also, I couldn't understand very well what the Mac is mentioned about it, because we make it on the construction, the attributes, but we pass over there just this .id, but the attributes over there, it's syllabus attributes.title.
Right. Okay, so we'll go over that too. All right, so the last thing I need to change in here, I don't need function.
Oh.
Right, no functions in classes. This is a function, right? But I don't need that like function keyword, that declaration for my classes. Okay, so we got our render implemented here. We got this render function in here. What do we need to do now in here? How does this all change? We're no longer doing this. We still want to update the inner HTML of the syllabus container, but what do we want to update it with now?
With our return data.
Exactly. I think that was Connie. So this is going to be new syllabus what? How do I get access to that return data here? What do I need to call off of new syllabus?
.render.
That's exactly right. So what's happening here is we went from, I don't even think I have that old code in there, but we went from, I wish I could show y'all. Just real quick, let's do the markdown preview. There we go. All right, so we went from this to this, right? So
That's cleaner.
Drying up our code, much cleaner, saved us a whole bunch of lines here. And this is kind of the beauty of OOJS. I'm going to rename this render syllabus card because I think it's a little bit more descriptive. But imagine, this is just, we just did this for one function. Imagine our application growing and doing this in multiple places. So I'm going to first do render syllabus card because I think that's just a little bit more descriptive than render. Cool. Let's see if this works. We have a debugger on line 13 just to see what this is over here. So let's go ahead and refresh our page and try to hit that debugger. Nice. So we're on line 13. We hit that debugger. Let's see what this is. This is, right, instance of our syllabus class. And we know that because if you were to look at the proto, we have, right, constructor class syllabus, and then we also have access to this render syllabus card. If this was an object from our database, we would not have access to render syllabus card. This proto also means that I can call render syllabus card off of an instance of this, right? So I can do this render syllabus card, and that returns my HTML with my attributes properly mapped out here. Even my category of art. Meg, you asked a really good question, right? What? How does it know about this category situation here? That is because you do this dot category. In our constructor, we just gave it that nested category object. So now I can do this dot category dot name and get that category name.
I wasn't sure if it was gonna be like another fast JSON API deal.
Yeah, well, it kind of is because it is nested. It is nested with it was nested within the attributes. So if we look at our constructor,
If it wasn't like, I didn't know if the category attributes would also be nested within category.
yeah.
So
It depends on how we set up our serializer. So remember, if I look at my syllabus controller here, right, I am just rendering, I'm just creating a new serializer. And in my serializer, I am just rendering this category association in my attributes object. So I'm not doing relationship belongs to category, all of that, because that would give me some more nesting that I just don't want to deal with right now. As your application grows, it may make more sense. This is for anyone using Fast JSON API serializer. It can be very nesty, to use the best word I could think of.
nesty.
It could be nesty. So, but now let's also put a debugger in here. And I believe, Sonar, you were asking kind of why in the constructor I could just do syllabus ID versus syllabus attributes. And that is because, again, like this data looks different coming from our serializer. So I have a debugger, again, on line 23 here. If I just see what syllabus is, this is the syllabus from my database. If I look at the proto, right, doesn't have any of that, that syllabus constructor. Like my constructor is just a plain old object. So this is not yet a new instance of our syllabus class. But if I were to do syllabus.id, right, I have access to the ID at the top level of this object, but if we look at it, my attributes are nested, and so is my category. So if I were to try to do syllabus.title, right, that's going to be undefined. That's not going to work. But I could do syllabus.attributes.title. That works because all of my attributes are nested in this attributes object. In the same way, I could do syllabus.attributes.category, and I'm going to get my category object back. So that's kind of like what's going on here. I just need my syllabus object here. That is going to be used for my ID. I also could have just passed in that whole syllabus object and gave this syllabus.attributes.title, right? Syllabus.attributes.description. That would have worked too. There's multiple ways to pass data to your constructor. I could have passed them each individually as well. It's totally up to you. But just like I was able to kind of refactor this and use my instance of my syllabus class here and use my HTML for my syllabus card in my class, I can do the same exact thing in my post. So in here where I'm using this render function, I can do the same thing where I'm saying, okay, I'm going to create a new syllabus, right? But in here, I believe it's going to be syllabus data instead for both of these, just because of the way what happened there? Because of the way our data is nested. I took this out of, for whatever reason, it's coming back in a data object. So I'm getting into that data object and just passing it the data as the constructor is expecting it to be passed in. And then I'm again able to use this variable new syllabus and I'm able to reuse this syllabus card. So if I go back into my code, do a refresh, this is working as expected. And then let's get Missy Elliott back. Do some images in here. And let's test out this create. And then make your art. We get that Missy object on the DOM. And again, as I mentioned, it's kind of nested in this data object. So we needed to create a new variable called syllabus data. And then in there is where we have our ID and our attributes. So y'all, we have went from having all of the HTML in our index.js class in two places, in our get syllabi and our post fetch, to creating a new syllabus class, building out our constructor, and implementing and kind of doing a refactor of our render in that class itself. Something that we can kind of go over in the future, one thing I did want to see if we could get to was actually going ahead and creating a static method for find utility. So y'all have these notes and you can practice implementing this in this repo fork and clone this repo. You have these notes. Try this weekend, where in that same class, we're going to create a static method, and you can read up on static methods here. It's a really, really good way to perform kind of like a batch operation on some data, AKA an array, right? This.all is our array of syllabi. We can use that find method to actually put an edit form, put some edit functionality into this. And we're using it here where we can actually find that syllabus by the ID and determine which syllabi data we're going to render our update form with. And then we can also use it to make a patch request. And I have that all here. So feel free to do this. This weekend, try it with this repo. I know some folks aren't yet at their project, but just read through this and see if anything clicks, and play around with how we would implement adding an edit form and making a patch request now using this syllabus class, this refactor. I also want to point out that this API project setup, I got a lot of this, a lot of our code from here. Their refactor is extensive. So if you go all the way down to where it says setting up the front-end client application, we've done all this initial setup stuff. We fetched and did all this, but then it goes to step 2, refactor. It covers, okay, how we're going to refactor this note class and just give it a render function, just like we did, and how you're going to implement that in your fetch. But then it goes, okay, how you would click the edit button to show a form, and their refactor implements an app class where all of the event listeners are attached. And they end up making this patch request in the app class. And they also refactor for the adapter pattern. So if you're interested in kind of like implementing some modularity and refactoring to make your app more modular, go ahead and do that. I don't think it's necessary with an app of our scale, right? I'm only gonna have one class. I only need one class for this app. If your app has auth and you're implementing user functionality and you're implementing functionality to add a category to something and you're going to have multiple classes, it may make sense for you to adopt some sort of adapter pattern and have some sort of like parent app class and make your app more modular. But for me, really, I have a has many and a belongs to, and I'm just rendering that has many those syllabi. And that is the extent of my application. I'm making GET requests and a POST request. I don't think I really need to implement something like an adapter pattern in my app. But as your app scales, you may want to consider something like this. And this is this repo is not only linked in the chat, but it's also linked in the JavaScript project build Slack channel. But y'all, we have, if we look at our kind of our object, or not our object, but our orders or orders of operation here, we have done steps 1 through 5. And again, for future use, you can create a static method where you're going to like find an object based on its ID and build out some edit functionality based on that, or whatever you want to do. But you now kind of know the basics of how we would implement this refactor. Any questions while I'm going to go ahead and push up this code and merge it. But does anyone have any questions while I'm doing that before we go? I want to make sure any questions about our refactor get answered.
Can you also pass it on the chat what you just showed on the GitHub, you know, about refactor documentation?
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I'm pushing up my branch, y'all. And if you remember, you can do your merge in your Atom. You can do git merge in here. You can merge it to master from the command line. I like taking a break from all of my command line Atom and just going into the GitHub GUI because I just like this flow better, and it kind of gives me a break from Atom, my command line. So if you saw, I had a pull request because I just pushed up that branch. I can do compare and pull requests here. I can create that pull request. It said I was able to merge into master. No conflicts with the base branch. We love to see it. Merge it. And then I can delete that branch from GitHub. Cool. And then now if I go back to my terminal, right? I can get checkout into my master branch. And I shouldn't, so if I now like look at, right, if I look at my order of operations, none of these are checked. If I look at my index, this is looking old, right? Like this is looking like my master branch because we created a new branch. So my master branch is untouched, just how we like it. But now we know that that code that we just merged is working. So I feel confident and good about doing the git pull here to pull down those updates from my master branch. And now if I go and check that out, I now have my actual code implemented here. My new code, my refactored code implemented. Any questions about 1 through 5? Sonar, did you ask a question and I'm forgetting it?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you how you go between your branches on the terminal, because if you want to call like the brand new branch, you know, and if you're on the master, how are you gonna access the other one if you want to do something?
Okay, so that would be git checkout. So git co. So to see all my branches, I can run git branch. Yeah. Wow. Okay, so I have OO, which is me playing around earlier, and then OOJS, which was me playing around just now. And in order to like switch to one of them, I can do git checkout OOJS. Now I'm in that branch, or I can use the abbreviation git co, and then I can check out into my OO branch. Now I'm there. And to get back, I could do master. The git branch will give me a list of all my branches, and I can just check out to different branches based on the one I want to go to.
And after, you're just gonna add and just write a note with what you've done and then push, right?
Yeah. Whenever I want to push a branch to master, I do git add, git commit based on what I did, and then git push. That will push that branch up to master, and then I'll be able to merge it with master, barring, you know, as long as there are no conflicts in your code. And then you can do that merge and you'll git pull that master branch down.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Oh yes, that's right, Connie. He wanted me to, so Sonar, you wanted me to drop this link in there. That's exactly what you want.
Are you gonna have another like build next week?